Well, you know the good thing about hitting rock bottom? There's only one way left to go, and that's up.
Hey guys, welcome back to Discovering Myth Talk Show. And today I am very nervous and I'm very excited because today is the first series Moth in Black launching. As you can see just now, this series is motivated by the movie Sing, which is I really love it because the words. You know what best about when you hit rock bottom? Because the only way is only going up. So that's how this series is inspired by. And today we have a very special guest all the way from the United States. And the first time when I had a conversation with him, I got a goosebump. You know, like from a life where you don't know what you want to do and when you get lost and how people support you. That, oh man, when I introducing about him right now, I'm having goosebumps. And let us welcome him, Kyle Houston. Hey man.
Hey Vincent. I got to tell you, I am so excited and honored to be your very first guest. I didn't realize that was the case. So So this is even more special for me.
Thanks, man. I really want you to be the first one because like your journey will be the perfect story to be shared and perfect to be the first one to be shared early this. And it's going to be it's really awesome.
When your life has been difficult and pretty messed up, you get to be a special guest on shows like this. So it's always a silver lining. Hey, let me throw out a couple things really fast. I absolutely love the production of this show. I love the videos. I love the whole thing. So we're off to a great start. This is
yes, true. I think we off to a even greater start when you say yes to my invitation for this show.
You're too kind. And we did have a conversation. That was the biggest reason I said yes. The goosebumps. All of those things. It was very organic, and I hope we can duplicate that today. I really do.
Yeah, definitely. I believe that we can definitely nail it. Okay, so maybe like hey guys, Carl. My man Carl here has an Instagram, and you guys can follow him at Carl Dean Houston. Yeah, probably. Yeah, this is. Can you see this? Yes. So maybe Carl, probably you can do a little bit of introductions about yourself. Yeah, like what you're doing right now and what is your biggest project. Yeah.
No problem. So what I am first and foremost is I'm a loving husband and a doting father. And I will tell you, I do not take that lightly. And that is my favorite position or role in life. But I'm also a speaker, a coach, and just recently put out my first memoir called Patchwork Junkie, which we'll talk about a little bit. But yeah, no, I'm an author as well, and I live in the United States, just like you said. Currently, I am coaching, but my passion and my career has been all built around sales and sales management.
Sales management. And here's the interesting that I really curious about when you share it just now is that you mentioned that you're taking this role as a father, as a family, really, really strong. Why? Why you so? Because I believe that because not everyone really taking these positions very strongly, but you take it so serious and strongly believe in it. So why?
Well, that's an open-ended question. I'll tell you, it's a combination of a lot of things. First of all, I love kids. I don't care if they're mine or they're somebody else's. And I believe that when you get to a certain age, you've got something to pass on. You've got something to offer. So as far as the responsibility and the duty part, these children were given to me for a reason. And it is my job to make sure that I help them through life, because we all know life is difficult. That's the business end of being a parent. But because of my childhood, because of separations between my mother and father, and being raised by a stepfather in a way that that wasn't always fun, and the fact that I have 4 children, and 2 of them are sons. One's 29 this year, and the other one's 22. And I didn't get to spend very much time with them growing up. So this is my second chance. And I take it very, very seriously. And it instills an incredible amount of love, because I understand what it's like not to be able to hug your kids, not to be able to touch your kids. I actually had one of my children who was put up for adoption while I was in prison. And that just ripped my heart out. And so now that I can get my hands on my 8 and 10-year-old girls, I kiss them every day, and I never take for granted the fact that I can be with them. So it's a lot of things. There's no short answers with any question with me, Vincent. So be careful.
No worries. I mean that I really love when you like really sharing your life stories. It's like telling me something, like it's like teaching me like, hey, this is what I've been through, and I hope that through me you can learn this, and apply it to your life. And this is why sometimes I really love a very, very long conversation.
Well, then you're gonna love this one.
That's true. So just now you mentioned that you do have like 2 sons, right? One is 29 and another one is 22 years old. So, and you also mentioned that you don't really spend a lot of time with them because you were at prison. So, what leads you to be behind bars?
Sure. So let's just jump right into that. So I usually, when I'm talking to somebody, I love to start out with all the accomplishments that I've done, because then I get to set this stage and people don't judge me. But here's the truth. When I was in my mid-20s, I got addicted to methamphetamine. And I don't know if your audience understands a whole lot about drugs, and it'd be great if they didn't, but it's an insidious drug. It takes a hold of your life in a really fast amount of time. And in less than 2 years, I went from a low-level user to a notorious meth cook. And a meth cook is somebody that manufactures meth. And I was using needles. I was using intravenously. I had gotten myself into this mental trap where I thought the only way for me to ever quit using drugs was to have an overdose, which is exactly what I was trying to do. And this is at 25, 26 years old. Well, I end up getting arrested. I end up facing 30 years with no parole. And I have just an incredibly painful experience all by myself in a cell, 23 hours a day by myself for about 10 months. And so, and there's a lot more to that story, but what ends up happening is through the course of getting re-indicted, I faced life in prison twice, and I did a total of 7 years behind bars. But my sons, going back to them, when I first got arrested, my son, who's going to be 29 years old in October, was 6. And he went from 6 years old to 13 while I was in prison. And that was a very, very difficult thing for me to have to experience. It was very difficult for him. It caused a tremendous amount of trauma. And the 22-year-old son, his name is Sean, he ended up getting adopted at the age of 4 years old. And I lost complete track of him for 14 years, which ripped my heart out. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, so sorry.
Yeah, it's tough on me. Anyway, it ripped my heart out, and we got back together when he was 18 years old. He reached out to me on Facebook, and over the last 3 or 4 years, we've developed a really good relationship that I wish was closer. But that's kind of how that all happened. That's how I lost many, many years with my children. And again, the bright side of it all, the silver lining to it all, is that my capacity to love and my capacity to not take my relationships for granted now is as good as it ever will be, as good as it ever could be. And I kiss my children every night. I make sure that I put them to bed. I make sure that they know that they're loved, whether they love me back or not at the moment. They always know that daddy loves them. And that's something that I will never, ever take for granted. And it's a great mindset to have, because there's that old saying that you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Well, the truth is it doesn't apply to me, because I already know what I've got, because I already know what it's like to be pulled away and be gone. And it actually is a great way to go through life.
Wow, man. I guess that it's really tough. It's really tough when I mean that we not spending time, and especially when Sean, right, at the age of 4. I mean that you mean that just now you mentioned that at the age of 18, right, he reached out to you through Facebook. I kind of curious that what is your emotion during that time when he tried to reach out to you in Facebook?
It was amazing. So through the course of and this is important to understand, I did have contact at some point with his adopted mother, and she would allow me to email her, and every once in a while she would send me a picture of Sean, and she would tell me what he's doing in his life. And that went on for about 3 or 4 years. But she was too scared to let Sean ever connect with me, because she was afraid she was going to lose him. Well, when at 18 years old, he just one day, and this was, I'll never forget it. It was May 13th. He sent an instant message to me on Facebook, and I saw it, and my heart just, I can't describe it. I was so unexpected. And I just looked at my messages, and I saw that I had gotten a message from him, and I knew instantly who it was. And truth be told, I missed this message for 2 weeks. Like I didn't look at Facebook. I was a sales executive at the startup, and we were growing a company at a fast pace, and I didn't have time for social media, right? and I looked down, my heart just, I froze for a second, and then it just exploded. And I instantly messaged him back, and I instantly got on a call with him, and I invited him out to California. And a couple weeks later, he was in front of me, and we were together, and it was something I'll never forget. This is something I've never talked about. I mean,
oh, really?
Yeah, I've never really talked about this, and I'm kind of remembering it as we go. I've talked about it with him, of course, but the truth is, to me, Sean has always been this prominent part of my life in my mind, and I was always praying that he knew he was wanted. I would pray to God, just please let him know that he wasn't unwanted, because I know he had separation anxiety and all sorts of things that come along with that kind of an experience. And the minute I got him in front of me, it was like, yeah, I didn't get all those memories with him, but it was like, gosh, I don't know how to explain it, but like I never missed a beat. Like I really knew this person in front of me. He was part of my heart that was now completing me. And that was a really critical moment in my life. Hopefully it was to him too.
Wow. I guess that if it was a prominent part of your life, and I definitely believe that it will be. I mean that 14 years after, like after being adopted and finally meeting you in front of him, I guess it definitely it would be like, I really don't know how to describe it, but I believe that it really would change. It really like a prominent as well.
It was the equivalent. I mean, it was an answer to a lot of prayers. And it's, in the moment, you're just happy and you don't want to let go. And I know it's weird. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be an 18-year-old kid and seeing a man that you've imagined your entire life, and this man just hugging you and saying he loves you. And, I can't imagine what it was like being him. But for me, it was just, finally, I have you and I don't want to let go. And I don't care how you feel about me, you're going to hear that I love you. And I know I made him uncomfortable, and I know that it was difficult, but I didn't care. I didn't care at all. And it's a really special moment for sure. Now, the unfortunate thing about that story is that, and I want to get into this, hopefully we will. And, I know that this conversation is organic, so I don't want to steer it at all. But at that time in my life, I was dealing with my own set of shame and guilt, and I was hiding so many things in my life that Sean and my relationship wasn't something that I could shout on the mountaintops. It was really weird. I had this sense of I never want to let him go, and yet I couldn't tell my friends and neighbors that this was my son, because it would cause all of these questions that would all lead to, hey, Kyle's been to prison, right? So it was a mixed bag, and it was a theme to my life. Like everything that happened that was great, every milestone that I achieved, every great thing that I did in my career was stained with my past and came with fear and doubt and insecurity, because I was hiding this thing about prison. So we'll maybe that'll make more sense if we talk a little bit about my career.
Yeah, sure. Because I was about because before you mentioned this part, right? Actually, I was about to ask you, what was your feeling? What was your feeling? During that moment, are you ready to share about your past to Sean? Like, hey, the reason why I'm not there when you need me the most is because I was behind bars.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, it's the part of the story that makes sense. If you look at it from Sean's side, Sean's thinking, and look, I'm assuming some of this. We've had enough conversations, but in Sean's mind, he's been rejected. You think about this, by the time he was 4 or 5 years old, he had been told that he was loved. He had been told that that he was wanted. And he had been, in his mind, rejected by every family that ever said that. He'd been in and out of foster care and all sorts of things. So at a young age, he was taught that he wasn't good enough, that there was something flawed about him, that there was a reason people didn't want him. And then at 8 years old, he was adopted by his adoptive parents, and I'm sure they did their best to make sure that that wasn't true. But when I get to meet him at the age of 18 years old, the only thing that's going to make sense to him, if I tell him, hey, I really wanted you, was for him to understand that I could not have him, that it wasn't my choice, that this was an extenuating circumstance where I was in prison. So he had to know the truth about everything. And I told him that in the context of, I love you, I wanted you, and this is why we didn't get to be together. And it's sad and it's tragic, but it's the story. And he accepted that. And I don't know to what degree he understands that I love him, but we're going to work on that for the rest of my life. That's something I'll guarantee. I'll go to my grave telling him how much I love him. And hopefully he'll read some of my book. He's in my book, of course. And the heart-wrenching part of when I lost him, when I got the news over a prison phone that that my sister wasn't able to keep Sean while I was inside, and then I was going to leave him, and had my last conversation with him. That was over the phone, and it was terrible.
So when you are having these conversations behind that phone call, right? You are entering which year? Because you mentioned that you need to undergo 30 years of 30 years of prison year, right? But at the end of that, it's reduced to 4 years, I guess, 7 or 4 years, right?
Not exactly. And look, this is where it gets kind of confusing. But I'll make it succinct and I'll make it easy. I was charged with a crime that if I got convicted of it, I would have gotten 30 years.
Okay.
And what ended up happening was about a month, and this took 18 years to get sentenced. Sorry, it took 18 months. 18 months to get sentenced. There's a huge difference between 18 months and 18 years.
Yes.
But in that 18 months, the evidence of the case got weak. And the police officers had no legal right to search the vehicle that they searched. So what ended up happening was they reduced the charges to the B felony, and I got a 9-year sentence. So I was actually convicted with a 9-year sentence, and I did 7 years on that 9. So that's how that worked out.
I see. So I guess that you're entering to which year when you're behind bars, when you get a phone call that your sister had to let go of Sean?
Yes, I got the call. I had a conversation with Sean. He knew that he wasn't going to get to stay with my sister. And even at 4 years old, it's amazing what, excuse me.
Yeah,
it's amazing what children are able to comprehend and understand. And I remember some of the last words that he said to me. I asked if he was okay, and he said, "Not really." And I said, "What's wrong, buddy?" And he said, "I wanted to be here when you got out." And it just broke my heart.
Oh,
and that was some of the last words that we spoke until he was 18 years old.
Oh,
so
wow.
He understood the whole thing.
So I mean, I'm really sorry if I asking. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's something I've dealt with, but it's just it breaks my heart for him. You know, I committed crimes and I did things to get myself in trouble, but never in my wildest dreams did I think the collateral damage was going to be my children in the way that it was. And again, the silver lining to that is that my 2 daughters that are with me now, they get the lion's share of all my love and all my heart and all my attention. And I live a much more fulfilled life because of those heartbreaks. But they didn't deserve it. They're not little anymore, but my boys didn't deserve any of that. And I wish I could just wave a magic wand and take it all away. But yeah, we've got to deal with that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, thank you for sharing this part of the stories about the children with us. And yeah, thank you, man. I know it's a bit emotion for you when sharing this part, especially about your children. And I do appreciate that you share it out. Thank you, man. Thank you.
I'm a big crybaby. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very heart touching, especially at the moment when you said that finally after 18 years. I mean that 18 years old son Sean in front of you and your heart came like, it's very touched. I definitely can imagine that scene. I can definitely imagine that kind of feelings, man. Oh man. Okay. Woo. It's a good start. Definitely a good start. So just now you mentioned that you've been behind bars for 7 years, And 23 years you spend, I mean, sorry, not 23 years, but 23 hours out of 24 hours you spend your time alone. And definitely I watched a movie, I watched a documentary, especially, I watched a documentary in Netflix. It's called about, it's titled called Prison Around the World. And one particular person, he just went to the prison and spent time there to experience the feeling. And I really wondered, like, when you spend the time, like 23 hours inside this four-coded world, what was running inside your mind during that time?
Yeah, so it's probably best if we set that up just a little bit, because I wasn't just in solitary, right? I was in, I had just come off the streets. I was an insane drug addict. I was facing this incredible sentence, and nobody that ever had been friends with me in the past had anything to do with me. I had let my mother down. I had burned every bridge that you can imagine. So I was alone on this ride in every way imaginable. And all I could think about was what my life was going to look like, whether I would ever get to contribute again. Would anybody ever love me? Would I ever get to have children and raise them? I mean, there was so many fears that I couldn't begin to, touch on right now in a short amount of time. But I'm dealing with all that in my head. And by the way, you don't just quit meth one day and your mind starts working. It takes a long time for you to start getting your own thoughts and for you to start recognizing the person that your parents raised you to be. And I'm going through that. I'm going through withdrawals. I'm going through all the things that happened during detox. And all of this pain and this confusion and this, what in the hell have I done to my life? And fear drove me to God. And it drove me to want truth and want to understand purpose and want to understand why I exist. It became this incredible existential experience where I just said, screw it. I have no distractions, right? I don't care what car I drive. I'm in this cell. I don't care what clothes I wear. I don't care about my status. I don't care about making money. None of that stuff is a distraction for me right now. I'm just going to have a mano-a-mano with God. And what I had to do is I had to strip down mentally to what I truly believed. And I had to create, what is my real foundation? And so I didn't want to get confused with with whether or not the gospel was right, or was it Muhammad or Jesus or Buddha or Hare Krishna or any of those people? Were they the true messenger? What I did is I said, do I believe in God? Do I believe that there is a creator of the universe? The answer was yes. Check that box. Then it was, well, what else do I believe? I believed that if I asked him for truth, to bring me truth, and I meant it with the purest of intentions, that I would get it. Okay, check that box. And the third thing that I believed was that if God wasn't going to bring me truth after I had asked for it with the purest of heart, if he would bring me anything other than that, then everybody on the planet is screwed anyway. So with those three beliefs, I started to figure everything out. And I will tell you that this was the biggest transformation of my entire life, where I discovered that it wasn't about religion, and it wasn't about dogma, and it wasn't about heaven and hell. Life was about love and togetherness and the oneness with everything in God. And these are really radical concepts for a guy from Missouri, especially in his mid-20s from Missouri, right? And this is not something that came lightly. This was a leap of faith that I had to take, where I had to release some of the childhood religion that I grew up with, and that's scary. When your convictions are that if you doubt anything that's in the Bible, or you doubt anything that you ever learned, you go to hell for eternity. That's difficult to start thinking, hey, it's really about something else. But the end of this, the moral of this story is that my relationship with God became so close, so intimate, and so personal, especially inside that cell, that nothing felt like it could touch me. I was still scared. I was still worried that I was going to do the rest of my life in prison. But I had gotten to a point to where it's like, if this is what's going to happen, God, so be it. Let's do this thing. But please, if it's your will, give me another shot at this thing. And, I've never been the same since.
Wow, wow, and what? So just now you mentioned that I mean, so okay. I'm kind of like this. The sharing is awesome, and okay. So just now you mentioned that throughout that 23 hours, and your relationship with God had changed. It become more closer, and especially when the detox happened, you started to have more clear thoughts, and you started to able to control yourself. And just now you mentioned that, hey God, if this is what you want me to do for the rest of my life, which is sitting in this bar, so be it. But if you want to give me a shot at this chance, having a second chance at life again, like just do it. So what happens after that prayer?
Well, fast forward to a couple months later, and the case got weak. And again, when I say by the grace of God, I don't take it lightly. And the case got weak. It got dropped to a B felony, and I got a 9-year sentence. So now I get my second chance. In the state of Missouri, a 9-year sentence, your first time getting in trouble, you do a third on that. So I was going to do 3 years. And so in my mind, I'd just done 18 months getting sentenced. I had another 1.5 years that I was going to go off to prison, and I was going to get out, and I was going to be with my son at the age of 9. But what ended up happening, and this is where the story gets a little rocky, is a couple months before I get out on what's called parole, the federal government, the U.S. government comes in and they indict me. And they try me for the same crime twice. And I go into one of the most violent holding facilities in the country in Leavenworth, Kansas, and I'm facing life in prison again. So the story doesn't end with this beautiful experience in that cell and this incredible relationship with God. The story has so much more to it. And look, all of this is captured inside Patchwork Junkie. So, I don't want to ruin the story, but I had to go off and spend another 2 years getting sentenced, scared to death that I was going to do life in prison for the federal government. And that is a unique experience for a lot of people, because essentially what happened is I spent the first 4 years of my 7 years behind bars thinking that I was never going to get out. And I go through that experience that I just talked about being scared to death, that I would never get to contribute, never get to love somebody, never get to raise children, never get to do all the gifts that people get to do on the outside. I went through that twice. And that is a debilitating psychological trap that you can't imagine. It chips away at your self-worth. It chips away at how bad you are. It creates this self-image and this negative talk that you would never believe. So fast forward a little bit further, I get some breaks and I get a 7-year sentence by the federal government, and I go off and I do the rest of my time in federal prison, and then I walk out. So it was if we broke it all down to the spiritual journey, I hit rock bottom. I had this incredible awakening, and I think I get this glimpse of what life can be and how happy it can be and how fulfilled you can truly be inside your heart. And then it gets stripped away. And the universe decides, hey, Kyle, how bad do you want this? And I have to figure all that out. And then finally, I walk out at the age of 35 years old in 2005 with no college degree, no network. I'd never even sent an email. And I enter the workforce. I enter corporate America as a scared convict, hiding all of my past from everybody, thinking that I'm worthless because people wanted to lock me up and throw away the key. And I take that scared convict making $10 an hour to a decade later of my life. I'm a vice president inside a $2 billion publicly traded company. So I created an incredible amount of success driven by the fact that I understand how it feels to have everything stripped away, and driven by, quite frankly, that fear and shame and doubt and insecurity. And I took all of those negative emotions and put together a comeback story that I'm proud of. And it's part of the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I want people to understand that no matter how far you fall, because I think I fell as far as anybody can. A lot of people do, but I can't imagine being any more, falling any further than where I was in that cell or where I was in federal holding. And then to pull yourself back up and not just survive, but thrive in life. Yes. The last year that I was in corporate America, I made $750,000 that year. And that's how big my career was. And it's not about the money. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about the fact that you can, without a college degree, with 5 convictions on your record and no education, right? No experience, you can find a way to be at the top of the game. And I want people to know that. I want everybody to understand that that's what's inside of them. And wherever they're at, whatever their situation is not them. Those are a few bad decisions that now they need to correct. And I want to be the example of that. And Vincent, let me step back and take a breath, because I'm on a soapbox now. I'm sorry, but this is what my life stands for and what makes meaning out of all of it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to to worry about that. If you feel like you want to share, you can just share. I'm so happy because I was just like, listen to a story, like, true, it's true. I mean, that what you say is true. Like, I mean, that I guess that everyone fall into the deepest and darkest tunnel or alley in their life. And because not so many people are so fortunate like you, like having taken all these insecurities, all those fear, and to generate it to become your energy to make a comeback in life. Because most of the people, when they go in and they come out, they fall into the same trap again. And I really love what you're doing. Is like, try to make an example for others. Hey, I've gone through much more worse than you. Okay, for example, like my son was adopted to other families, and I've going to jail, and I was like have a clear sense of mind of what life should be, and then be stripped away again, and then I come back to life again, and I make this as like this big company. So I mean that this is so inspiring. I mean that this is why you are the first. This is why you are the first. This is why you are the first. And here's the thing, because you mentioned that 2005 was the year where you finally release, you get out from these bars. And how many years? This is something that I'm really curious, because how many years did it take for you to share your stories, to share your past with others? Because it's not that you have that if we say in terms of society, some sort of like a resume, your resume is not that good. You have 5 convictions and etc. So how long did it take for you to share your past, to tell people about your past and to share that what I am today is linked to the past that I had.
Right. This is the best question you could have ever asked, and I just want you to know you're really good at interviewing, and
Thanks,
you're
man.
a great listener. So I appreciate this. But the quick answer, and then we'll talk a little bit about what led up to it, is I didn't tell anybody about my past until 2017. So this is 12 years after I got out. And for 12 years, I had hidden this from every employer, every salesperson that ever worked for me, every friend that my wife and I had ever had. We have the closest relationships. I don't just have surface relationships with friends. I get so connected. And this is something that's innate about me. It has nothing to do with the amount of time I did and all that other stuff. Just my nature as a human being is that if you're going to be my friend, then it's going to be a close, for the rest of our life relationship. And we have those relationships with people that we did not tell about my background, because I was so scared that if anybody found out that I'd been to prison or that I'd done drugs at the level that I had done them, they would leave me. They would find out that I was worthless. And this had a lot to do with my self-worth and those life sentences that were pending and how I felt about my past. And so during that decade of my life where I went from the $10 an hour to the success side of it all, I got stage 4 cancer. I lived every day in shame and fear and guilt. And I mean, just insane amounts of it. And so in 2017, I had a failed partnership with some business partners, and I was trying to keep my business afloat. And my wife and I were we had created a life for ourselves that was not fulfilling. And in my mind, I recognized that every decision I was making, whether it was finances, whether it was relationships, whether it was my career, whether it was the amount of time I spend for myself, was all driven by the fear of people finding out about my past. And I'm a proud person, and something clicked inside of me and said, take your life back. You're Kyle Houston. Come on, man. And I said, and I thought I talked to myself like that, right? So the only way I was going to do this is release the truth. Like, it's what I'm hiding is what's causing all this. And so I sat down and started writing the book. In July of 2017, I started to call my friends and I would tell them, hey, I have something I want to share with you. Can we set up a time to come over? And they're all used to me joking, and this was a really great moment. They're like, what's going on? And I would come over and I would tell them, and they would protect me. They would wrap their arms around me, and every one of them would cry with me, and nobody left. And every single person, I get a little choked up saying that, boy, I am a crybaby. Every single person I told made me stronger, made me realize that I never, ever should have lived with this burden, because I didn't get out of prison in 2005. That's when I physically walked out of the cinder blocks and the bars. I didn't get out of prison until 2017 in my mind. You know what I mean? Yep. And none of that success meant anything. None of the house or the cars or any of that stuff meant anything, because I couldn't enjoy it. So during the process of writing that book, I finally started to release everything that I was just talking about. And I actually, for the first time, looked and I said, wow, I've done some pretty incredible things. Wow, I have lived so much, with the past and what I had done, and feeling so badly about it that I didn't give myself any credit for achievements. And my life completely changed 2.5 years ago. So there's the story. Again, wow. That's the closest to speak. That's the first time I told that story too. For my friends, they lived it with me. But I can't tell anybody enough that certainly there are times to hide your story. Certainly there are reasons to not reveal it to everybody. Because if I would have walked into the companies that I work for and I would have said, hey, I'm a 5-time convicted felon, can I run your sales team? Well, the answer would have been unequivocally no, right? No, we can't trust you. So I hid it when I needed to hide it, but I didn't need to hide it to the degree that I did. I didn't need to feel the shame to the degree that I did. And once I released it, I decided nobody has done anything bad enough to live like I did for 12 years. Nobody for 25 years, probably. And if my life is going to stand for anything, it's the pursuit of giving people hope and relief from all of that, because I know I'm not the only one. I know that there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not billions of people, if not everybody, that lives in some type of shame that hinders their ability to give their gifts. And now I'm teed up and ready to go, right? Now I've been through the mud, I've been drugged through the mud and back. And now there isn't a whole lot that somebody can come to me and say, hey, I'm ashamed for this reason that I haven't been through. And that's why I feel honestly very lucky to have gone through it, because I'm educated. I'm indoctrinated in the ability to truly dive deep with somebody and say, hey, I'm in the trenches with you, brother, sister. Let's get up out of this because I know how this works. That's powerful stuff.
Yep. I mean, that is truly powerful, and it's so amazing when you share that you finally like call your friends that, hey, come over. I got something I want to share with you. I guess that when you started to make that, you do feel the fear. I think that this is not just you. I do believe that it happens to everyone, especially those who are having a convicted, like sitting behind bars and everything. Because we as a society, I mean that we have this kind of mindset that once you go into the bar, there's no chance for you to have a good life. Once you go into the bar, once you go into the jail, you'll always be a bad person. And it's amazing, and it's so amazing when you having such a good friends who surround you and give you a hug and telling you that we are here with you. And they didn't laugh at all. That's the most important thing. They didn't laugh at all. And it's truly, truly amazing. Truly amazing. Man, I'm really happy. I'm really happy that, especially the moment when you say, I'm actually physically out from the prison, is actually from the year of 2017. That's where I started to know that I need to take control of my life back, but not going forward because of those fear. Man, this is so powerful. This is so powerful.
It's a part of my life that when you're living in fear, when you're living in survival, you don't see it. You don't see it. It's just it's the way it is. And do you understand the term white knuckling? When you white knuckle something, it's when it's just stressful. It comes from holding a steering wheel very tight and white knuckling. I white knuckled my life for 12 years. I white knuckled my career, and everything was me running. I just emotionally and spiritually was running from the past. And I was always preparing myself for the day that one of the companies I worked for would find out, that somebody would go on the internet and find out, and they would come to me and say, why should we keep you? So I was always working 16. I was always working. Let's just end it with that. I was always working because I was always trying to prove my worth to somebody. And it was never going to be enough. Like I had gotten so deep inside that mindset that I was not worth anything, and that I was that it was all a facade. That was my reality. That everything I was doing was to continue to build upon this facade, and it was a miserable life. there was great things that happened. My kids were born, and I took great vacations, and my wife and I, we lived a great life, and we had great friends and spent time with them on the weekend. So it wasn't all bad. But the vast majority of my life was me white knuckling everything and trying to hedge my bets. And once you finally let that go and you lighten up, you can start being yourself for potentially the first time in your life. And it's all held back by these silly made up fears that everybody's going to hate you. Everybody's going to leave you. Everybody's going to take what you have. And once that goes away and you realize you live in abundance and that none of those things matter and that people really love you for who you are, you just can't imagine the strength. You cannot imagine it. And I hope that at least one person hears this today and goes out and tells a single person about whatever it is, just one person, and it starts there. Because it started there with me. I told 3 people at once, right? And they were my first 3 people. And you just couldn't imagine this. At the time, my persona was to be this sales executive with lots of bravado and all the answers. And, my God, I can sell anything. That was the part of the facade that I built. And to walk in and tell these 3 people and staring at the floor and, him hauling around and stuttering and trying to tell them, and then have all of them tell me, we don't care. We're glad that you told us. One of them actually cried and told me about his brother. And we have a relationship that it will last for the rest of our lives. But to go from scared to death to that moment was leaps and bounds towards who I really am. And God, I hope somebody hears this, and I hope they take that leap. I hope everybody hears it and they take that leap.
Yep, true. And it's, man, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. Every time when I listen to you share about this inspiring moment, it's so amazing. I don't know how to describe it in words, but I know that it's just so amazing. It's just so amazing. I'm glad I'm having this conversation with you. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book. It's called Patchwork Junkie, right? So how did the story come from, and what is the book about?
So the book is the thing that I wanted to do when I wrote the book more than anything was I wanted to make sure that I set this story up to where people could understand how somebody can fall this far, how somebody can get trapped inside addiction. And the driving force for this book was that I wanted people to gain empathy for all sorts of things in life. So I wrote it in first person narrative so that people understood what I was thinking. And it's just essentially the story of my life from the time I got addicted to drugs. The reader parachutes right into the middle of a fire, the very first chapter, that I had a fire in one of my meth labs. And then it goes to my time in prison and my relationship with God, which incidentally was not perfect by any means. I went through all the emotions that people do, the fear of hope, the fear of having faith anymore, because I had gone through this roller coaster ride. And at times you blame God, you blame the universe, and so I go through those arguments and the tough times and the heartbreak, sharing my thoughts. And then of course it flashes back and talks about my childhood and things like that. But it was written for anybody that wants to understand what it's like to be addicted to drugs, or have gone through child abuse, or dealt with prison, loss of children, all of the things we just talked about. But it's also written for the people who the mothers and the sisters and the brothers and the family members and the loved ones of people that knew addicts or lost their loved ones to addiction, because everybody assumes that the addict doesn't love them. How can the addict do this to me if they love me? And the truth is you read my book, you'll find out. I loved my mother. I still do. But when I was going through the addiction, I loved my children. I loved my mother. I loved my girlfriend. I loved everybody, and I broke their hearts. And I did the exact opposite of what somebody does when they love somebody. And here's the reason why. And it's all in my book. It's all in there. And it's got humor, believe it or not. And I pulled no punches whatsoever, because I knew that if I was going to release that thing that we talked about, if I was going to truly take back my life, I needed to do something where there was no turning back whatsoever. And that's this book. Once you read this book, there's no secrets left, man. There's no secrets left. Every skeleton's inside there. So on one sense, I can't wait to get it in everybody's hands. On the other sense, I'm wondering if I'm ever going to be employable again. So time will tell. Time will tell, my man.
Yeah, thank you. I mean that. Hey guys, okay. So if you want to know where you can order for your pre-order, you just go to patchworkjunkie.com. Patchworkjunkie.com for your pre-order. And I really can't wait. I really can't wait for that book to arrive. I really can't wait. Thank
you, Vincent. Thank you. That's great. I can't wait either. There's lots of things I'm proud of in my life, but this ranks up at one of the top ones. I have spent more time and more effort and more soul putting the words down on paper through this book, and I am so anxious to get it into people's hands and have them change. Change.
Wow, amazing, and wow, this is so amazing. Like these conversations, and I mean that. Thank you, man. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl, for sharing your story with us today, and thank you so much for saying yes for my invitation, because I was kind of worried. Yeah, because I know that you are very busy with your book and writing and doing some work as well. So I mean, I appreciate you spending your time here, man. I really love it.
Vincent, let me make sure that you understand this. The fact that you're interested in what I have to say, and the fact that you're creating a platform to help others change their lives, the pleasure is all mine. And it's my honor to be your first guest. And this was one of the best conversations that I've had with any interview so far. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. So yes, so thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you so much for your time. And I know it's approximately 10:30 a.m. and I'm not sure what's your schedule for the rest of the day, but still, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this episode 1, the series of Moth in Black. And stay tuned, because we're gonna have our next guest, which will be tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. GMT +8 and 6 p.m. CST. And I see you guys in the very next episode.